Alexia, you're finally awake. Alexia.
Alexia Ashford is far and away the most dangerous person that Chris and Claire Redfield will encounter during the events of the game Resident Evil Code Veronica X. An absolute genius born for the sole purpose of expanding scientific discovery, Alexia would impose an absurdly strong presence from a very young age, making waves throughout Umbrella laboratories worldwide with her reputation alone.
Today, a 10-year-old girl was sent here as a chief researcher from Umbrella's Antarctica research facility. Her name was Alexia Ashford. I was 21.
The story of Alexia Ashford as we know it begins with her father Alexander and his quest to bring glory back to his family name. His father, Edward Ashford, had been one of the co-founders of the multinational pharmaceutical conglomerate Umbrella and had instilled in his son a loyalty to their legacy. Unfortunately, however, Alexander wasn't nearly as gifted as his father in the company's field of medical virology, a fact which would become glaringly apparent as Edward would suffer an untimely death during one of his experiments. This passing would force Alexander into a position as sole heir of the Ashford name, and under that immense weight, he would begin to buckle. With little to no progress in his virological endeavors, another co-founder named Oswell Spencer had begun to push him to the side in terms of Umbrella's company direction. This backfoot position causing the panicked Ashford to begin looking elsewhere for another solution to his intellectual failings. He would begin by exploring options within his preferred field of geneticism. Through his studies, he'd managed to pinpoint a gene which was capable of affecting an individual's intellect, and from that, he would begin to structure a plan. Continuing in the reverence of his lineage, he would decide to take DNA from the first Countess of Ashford, a woman named Veronica, and create an embryo so that she could be reborn, implanting that embryo into a surrogate mother and tampering with its genes in order to ensure the child's brilliance. However, to Alexander's surprise, the result of this experiment would not be one child, but rather twins. A boy which he would name Alfred, and a girl which he would name Alexia. Opting to cover up the circumstance of their births, Alexander would raise the two children as his own, instilling in them the same reverence for the Ashford name as his father had before him. But as they grew, it would become apparent that the intelligence gene hadn't been evenly distributed between the pair. Alfred was only moderately more intelligent than the average person, while Alexia's intellect was astounding. At the age of 10, she would graduate from a prestigious university, becoming employed by Umbrella shortly after and gaining immediate notoriety from the others within the organization. By the age of 12, she had begun to develop her own offshoot of the T-virus, which she would dub T-Veronica. However, while her career as a scientist would thrive, socially she would become very isolated. Due to her impeccable intellect, Alexia would look on others as the ignorant masses, forming no strong connections with anyone other than her brother Alfred. She would view these people almost as ants, which is where she would derive her basis for T-Veronica, becoming obsessed with the relationship between a queen ant and her workers, which she saw as analogous to her own situation. Seeking to make this analogy even more pronounced, she would mix queen ant DNA with the T-virus to create T-Veronica, planning to use it on herself before infecting the entire world. But while she buried herself in her research, it would be the discoveries of Alfred that would truly spark an evolution of her plans. Alfred had discovered a secret room in the Antarctic base which contained the detailed plans of he and his sister's creation. Bringing this information to Alexia, she would lose all connection to the man she'd already begun to view as beneath her, making plans for Alexander to become the first test subject of T-Veronica. She, with the help of her brother, would capture their father and inject him with the virus to view his evolution. As she'd expected, Alexander's cells would begin to rapidly change, T-Veronica causing a severe degradation of both his brain cells and his body in general. The conclusion being that, in its purest form, the virus was too potent for an individual to adapt to. With this revelation, Alexia would begin to plan other methods of implementation, coming to the conclusion that the only way to truly coexist with her virus would be a drawn-out exposure over the course of several years. Charging her brother with the duties of the Ashford mantle, Alexia would resign herself to cryogenic stasis, where for the next 15 years she would stay deep within the bowels of the Antarctic facility. However, when she would finally be reanimated, it would be under much different circumstances than she had anticipated. Alfred had died in her arms, and while he was no equal, he was the only true confidant that she had ever known. In retaliation, she would capture the duo that had brought about Alfred's end, rendering them unconscious and infecting one of them with T-Veronica. This capture would eventually bring more people to her desolate base of operations, a man from her past named Albert Wesker, as well as an experienced bioweapon fighter named Chris Redfield, the man who would ultimately put an end to her plans once and for all. Alexia Ashford is among the most brilliant and brutal people that can be found on the grounds of Umbrella's Antarctic facility. A deranged individual who would envision herself as the pinnacle of humanity, Alexia would sacrifice well over half her life to see her research brought to its true potential. And while, in the end, she would fail to bring about her unquestionable global reign, with the power given to her by T-Veronica, she certainly could have, if not for the combined efforts of another, more cohesive brother and sister duo.